us all good, right? If not, I'm really loud, so
same.
All good. Okay. All right, well, thank you, and welcome to session... Oh, wait, you went too far. Welcome to session 301, Being Realistic in the Age of AI, what are students actually saying. My name is Marisa, Lucian, and this...
And I'm Alexis, Glasgow.
So I work in the newly named Eagle Learning Center. That's where you can find academic support services here at American University.
And I'm the Academic Integrity Coordinator here in the Office of Academic Integrity, so I talk to all the students firsthand that are coming through the academic integrity process university-wide.
So we're here to kind of go over our surveys and what we've learned through our experiences of how students are interacting with AI and how we might be able to better avoid negative outcomes. So today we're going to be going over some patterns related to AI misconduct and have some practical strategies that faculty can use to guide their classroom discussions and expectations so that students don't accidentally end up on the wrong side of a line. And then we have some potential changes and resources that people can use so that students, again, don't feel tempted to be using AI when there are plenty of free and easy to use resources available to them provided by American University.
Okay, so basically this is just showing kind of how we're going to break down what we've been hearing from students and other things like we're going to start with what I'm hearing in our office specifically from students that are going through the process. And then I have done some tabling events. We have done some together in both the undergraduate dorms as well as just sitting on the quad and talking to students. So I'm going to go over some of those results. And then Marisa's going to go over the Eagle Learning Center's survey they sent out regarding some opinions, comments, results about AI use and non-use, I guess, essentially. Okay, so basically, this is some information about the back end of what students are saying in the office. So this is whenever they're going through the process. Essentially, I explain the concern to the student. They have a second to kind of respond in my meeting, kind of give some input on what happened in their particular situation. I usually end up giving them some advice about what happened, and I do get to hear all of the things surrounding their particular concern. So I've kind of put together some things that I've heard from the cases I've seen in our office. A lot of the stuff that students are saying they were using AI for, or the reason they resorted to AI, is oversight and confusion on how to properly cite. So a lot of these students, I think, come into it thinking they can cite things, and then when they discover they cannot, or they have some issues with formatting, how to change it from MLA to APA, they start using these tools, and maybe they're asking the tool to organize their citations, and then it becomes, it's like a bad first date. Like they start really well, like some initial questions, and then it becomes like, oh, we're getting really deep now, and they're giving just the output they're getting from AI is like, oh, but we can also do more for you than just help you format. We can also give you fake books to put in there and fake page numbers, and they don't realize these things are actually not real. And so I think it starts as confusion and becomes like indulgence in a tool, essentially. Tools that are kind of adapting over time to all this AI stuff is Grammarly. It started once as just fixing some grammar problems. Now it's like, but help me, I can add a paragraph and make you sound really professional. And the students in their time of need are like, yeah, I'm doing that. And then they'll end up just copying and pasting and citing it as their own. And some other things we're seeing is that they were using it for revision and writing in place of peer review. So instead of asking a friend or asking someone in the class or your own professor kind of what they should be doing for their assignment, they're just resorting to a tool. Like, how do I write an introduction paragraph? And then the tool writes it for them and all these things. And then it just becomes something they kind of use as their own. And then some other things just on here. A lot of the things that I'm hearing is rephrasing. So whenever I meet with students, I always say, like, did AI create something for you, or did you input something that you have done by your own doing into AI, and then it kind of transformed into something else? And so a lot of the times, like, oh, it's the first one. Like, I didn't ask AI to make anything for me. I just asked it to organize my stuff. And I don't know what happened here. And then it starts at something small and becomes something much bigger than that. And so, of course, at the point in which they're talking to me in my office, I can give advice and I can tell them how to respond to each concern and what is in their best interest as to what to say. But at that point, I can't really help them get out of the process. So these results on the other end of it are hearing from students who have not yet been in the process, who are around campus, just like looking for resources and tools. And we asked them some questions about the concerns they have about AI. And of course, they were ready to talk about this. So it's interesting. A lot of them are saying that they just feel like AI is taking over for them and they don't feel like they're learning as much or doing as much of their own work as they used to. And it's interesting that they're saying this and they're also saying, but I'm still using this tool. And it's like, it's sad, but I'm doing it. And everyone else is doing it, so I'm going to keep doing it. And so it's kind of just leveling that playing field of like, is everyone doing it? Are we all doing our own work? How can we communicate what our responsibilities as students are with all these things in mind with the growing age of AI? Some other concerns they had about is the fact that how do we double check AI if we don't even know these things are wrong or happening? I think that is something I will go into a little bit more in the end. But basically, I just think that they don't even have a foundation of what could be wrong when they begin using these tools. And they think it's all kind of appropriate until someone's notifying them it's not. And in the professors' minds, they've already put this in their syllabus. They've already told you not to use it. So they're not going to start fresh with you often in the middle of the semester. And so students are kind of losing that tie to like, I shouldn't be doing this, but I'm getting really stressed out, so I'm going to start doing it. And I think that's what we're kind of seeing here with their concerns about the reliance on these tools growing over time. They're seeing their peers using it. And so they kind of want to get ahead of well, if they're going to get an A with AI, then I also should kind of use this tool as well. And I think the communication of it all is lost, and everyone's just kind of relying on these things in the back end and not really bringing it to the front to ask questions and be more inquisitive and not use these tools.
All right, and then we'll go into the Eagle Learning Center survey. So we sent out a survey to students who have used our resources in the past semester. So as you can see from the breakdown, most of the respondents are freshmen and sophomores, which really lines up with our usage rates. We got a lot more answers by tabling and having food, which makes sense, rather than an anonymous survey through an email. But we got some interesting results, and I'd like to go over some of the quite insightful things that students had to say. So we did have a lot of people from CAS, of course, and a few, but the more interesting part is, first, how many professors have clarified their AI policy? So the good news is a lot of people have clarified their AI policies, and that's what we like to see. So the problem, though, is that some students, for example, are not sure if their professor has gone over their AI policy, which might mean that they haven't at all, or that they just skipped that class. I mean, we're not entirely sure what that might have been. But around a quarter of students are missing direction in at least some of their courses on what they should be doing in terms of AI. And that's a very dangerous position to be in for the student, because they don't know. They don't know what's going to throw them off. Are they okay if they're not sure how to use this one grammar point and they ask ChatGPT how to use it? Or is their instructor going to be angry about that, right? So it's really important that all professors are being very clear about what their AI policies are, because that at least is that first layer of protection to make sure that students don't end up on the wrong side of that line. How students are using AI in their classwork, about half of the respondents said that they are using it at least some of the time in their coursework. And going through the qualitative data, the main things that we were finding is, first, writing. A lot of the drafting processes of writing are being automated by students. So they're asking ChatGPT to brainstorm ideas for them, or maybe brainstorm with them, right? It might depend on the student. Outlining their papers, finding sources, which is the one that I always get a little iffy about because of its propensity to give false sources. They're also having AI take notes for them. This is both for their readings and for lectures. So students might be recording lectures and having an AI transcribe everything and making notes for them. Some students are inputting readings that they're getting from their instructors into, for example, Notebook LM, and then having it simply summarize what the entire article is and what they should learn from it. In addition, some students are having it, they're having more of a conversation. I had a student write about how when they run into economic concepts they don't know, they talk to them like they're a tutor, so they're asking questions and trying to figure out a concept, which is probably a nicer use of AI because they're actually interacting with it and trying to learn. The biggest problem, though, is the pattern in small assignments and quote-unquote busy work. We had multiple students write that if they believe that the instructor is not reading and grading the work, that they will not do it, and that they will simply have AI do it and submit it. And so that's something that we'll be talking about later, and different things that we might want to be doing with this kind of work in order to reduce that. Some interesting highlights that we found for how students were using these sources. I just pulled a couple from the survey, because there were a lot of very long answers, which is the nice part about an online survey, is that, again, for example, we have some students who are taking notes during lectures, finding sources, using study tools. But we also found the pattern that, as you can see here, when students don't understand things, that seems to be a point where they are starting to lean on AI. As soon as they hit a roadblock, instead of, for example, going to the writing center because they're stuck on a brainstorming topic, or getting a past tutor because they don't understand an economic concept, they're asking ChatGPT. And sometimes this is because they might be busy and they may not be aware that, for example, past tutoring is available up until 9 p.m. and online. So students are able to get help after hours, but they may not be aware that they can. But also, it's a little hard for you all to see here, so we might want to skip for we didn't realize it would be this low. That, for example, if professors aren't requiring work, this student says that they don't bother solving math problems. They just have an AI bot do it. And they don't want to do the busy work, and they want tutoring where they're just given the answer. They're not actually walked through the process of how to do it on their own, which is definitely not what we want to be hearing. But that is an honest answer, and it's good that they are being honest about that, so we know. An interesting point, though, with this next slide is, what concerns do you have? So, again, I'm sorry that it's at the bottom, but these bottom ones line up with these. So this student who said, I'm not doing my work, said, I'm concerned that I'm not learning. Which we're so close to the precipice. But, you know, we laugh and we jest, but that is an opportunity for us to reach that student, to say, we know that you feel like you're not learning. This is why. You're not learning because what you're viewing as busy work is important for the learning process. Learning to take notes isn't just writing down transcriptions. It's summarizing and understanding and then putting things into your own words. That's actually a way to learn. And a lot of students don't understand that that's part of the learning process, and so they view it as unimportant and something that they shouldn't be doing. So something that is really important to go over in your courses is why you're doing specific things, why you want them to be reading these and taking notes and summarizing these and thinking on their own. Because if they do understand that this is going to help them because of X, Y, Z, they may be less likely to go and just throw it into an AI generator and, you know, just copy and paste what it spits back out. You're never going to reach every student. I think we all know that that's just kind of true, unfortunately. But there are a lot of students who just don't understand why they're supposed to do things, and we might be able to reach those students. It's also really important, even for students who aren't using AI, so that's what that line means, is below it are students who have said that they have used AI, while the top are examples of students who said that they do not use AI at any of their coursework, is that students who aren't using AI feel that it's unfair when they see their classmates getting away with AI use. So it is important to also be monitoring, not just, you know, in general, but you may be dissuading students who aren't using AI and actually kind of encouraging them to use it because students are using it, getting away with it, and seeing no negative consequences. And that kind of teaches the wrong message, right, of you can just coast through this class and it doesn't matter. So some kind of takeaways from all of this is, for example, right, that when they don't know where to start, when they don't understand an assignment, that's a point where they often will start to lean on AI, and also a point where we have our biggest chance of stopping them from using AI because they're reaching out for help, and if we can give them a helping hand in a way that is accessible to them, is easy to use, and won't get them in trouble in her office, they're more likely to take that route versus some view the work that they might be doing as meaningless, or they might think that you're not checking that work. That's more of a communication of why we're doing those things and being really clear not only in the syllabus, but throughout the course and in your classes. I'm having you do this because I want you to be able to do this in the future.
I also just want to add real quick on this slide, something that I think that goes along with they don't understand is like sometimes they do understand, but they're risking using this tool to get a grade or to finish the assignment anyways, even though they understand it's maybe not the right thing. Like I've had journalism students where it's like, well, I know I have to have a quote in news articles. And I'm like, right, but the quote has to come from a real person and it has to be a real quote from a real time. And they're like, and then it's AI. And they're like, well, this quote isn't real. I can't really say it is. And I'm like, well, and that's a problem here, right? So you understood what you needed to do, but where was that kind of disconnect of, well, how do I get here to do it correctly? And then maybe it's a thing of like, well, I didn't know how to ask my professor. I couldn't find a quote, or I felt embarrassed, or all these feelings they have. And then that resorts to them using these tools or making up things. And they think it's not going to happen on the back end where they get caught doing these things. I think it's important to think that understanding is not just a straightforward concept. It's more of like do you have the confidence to understand and then do this correctly? Or are you kind of still having some comprehension errors? Are you still needing some support? Even though you might understand the concept, do you understand how to produce what we're looking for here? And then on the meaningless comment there, I'm just thinking about how drafts are included for academic integrity concerns. So if a professor has a concern about a draft, AI use on a draft, they can report that to our office, and it can become a concern, and the student might get an outcome. And the most common outcome in our office is a failing grade for the course. And so for a student who comes in and is like, this is a draft, what are you confused about? I'm like, okay, right. And drafts are also, you have consequences for drafts too, because it should be your starting point of good work, and it shouldn't start with like, well, I put these things in here, and the page numbers might be inaccurate, but I was going to go back at the end and fix that. And it's like, well, that's never going to happen. I hate to be a future caster, but it's not going to happen. And so I just think that they still don't really comprehend, even when they are in our office, that what they were doing was wrong because it was a draft. I was going to fix it. And it's like, but here we are 4 weeks later. And so I think that just kind of knowing that they don't even know what they might think they know is helpful in guiding them to use these tools or to not use these tools.
All right, so that's kind of the first part of our little workshop here. So we're going over, all of the answers that we had gotten. So for this part, first, if you had any questions or you wanted to go back and look at any of the answers, this is our chance to do that. And then I want to get into little groups where you can discuss in your courses, what have you been seeing? Has your experience been lining up with these? Have you been finding any answers that are raising concerns for you? Because also later we'll be doing a more in-depth little breakout, and so if you can find your group now, it'll make it much easier later. So first, does anyone have any questions for us, or any slide that they want to see? We have, yes.
Hi, my name is Caroline. I'm teaching in sociology. You may cover this in the future, or we might cover this after breakouts, but I'd rather ask. Do you have examples of what are some good, clear examples of how professors should talk about AI to students later on for us to share? Okay, cool. I figured it was coming, because that's what teachers do, but figured I'd ask first. All right, so we'll go to someone who has an actual question.
Hi, I'm Nick Cabot. How common in your roles do you find that students are really concerned with being accused of using AI when they actually haven't, when they're doing their own work?
Yeah, so many students, well, I won't say so many. I feel like more students that I'm seeing for final season. So there's a lot of seasons where it's high peak volume in our office, and it's midterms and finals. And so in the finals season, I feel as though there's a lot of courses in which there's students that are being grouped together for concerns. So it's maybe I'm concerned about students using AI, so I'm going to group who I'm assuming is using AI together to be putting concerns into your office. So I have 6 students in the same class who are all having the same concern that they're using AI, right? And so for half those students, they're like, so I'm getting called in here because my paper was too good and they don't believe it was me. And I have to be like, no, that's not what's happening here. It's that there are these tools that are being used, and this is not in comparison to other work, in comparison to how you kind of respond in class, those kinds of things. You're being led into this office, and for the students who are genuinely doing their own work, feeling like they have to defend their potentially what a professor is believing is AI and it's not, I feel like it kind of sets these students back so far because they think they're confident. They're sometimes seniors, or like they're doing their thesis and all these kinds of things. And it's like, well, I was really confident. I spent hours doing that. And I think something is like, for students who are using AI and are getting, caught in this kind of storm of our office, I would say that like, it's hard to tell them that we are accusing them of something that they didn't in fact do. And how do I convince them to like just be confident in their work, I think is what I try to do on my hand. I'm like, well, if you're confident and you can explain how you did your process, if you can be like, I'm proud of this work and I would love to explain to you why I'm so proud of this, you're going to be okay. If you're someone who's coming in here being like, I don't really know what this even means in my paper, I kind of forgot, I don't know, it's kind of going to be more of concern. So for the students who are being accused, didn't actually do it, like our cases get dismissed, and it usually is pretty straightforward once they get to our office. Is it fun? Is it a short process? No. So it's not ideal, but I think like it goes back to what we will talk about after this breakout, is that foundationally we have to show the students like what having confidence in your work looks like, what citing things that you have read and can tell someone what you read in that source looks like, and these kinds of things. And hopefully you wouldn't find yourself in this position, but if you do, you'll be okay because you're confident and you're okay with talking through how you did these things, kind of thing. So yes, I'm seeing it, but we're trying to combat that by doing these kinds of things, if that makes sense.
And just before we go to the next questions, I will also say that as far as I'm aware, we haven't had any students who have used our services at academic support and then ended up in her office. And if they did, we have records of students and when they visit and what they worked on. So that would also be a defense for them. If they did their brainstorming session with a Writing Center tutor, they can say, I didn't use AI, I went to a person. There's a actual physical record of me going into the Writing Center and working with somebody on it. So that could also be another way to sell going to these services is, you're safer because we can prove that you were there and that you were getting help from another human being who was working you through that process.
I also think when they get accused and they didn't actually use AI, it's important to like kind of think back to like relationship building from the professor and the student's point of view. It's like, I feel like this kind of becomes so robotic to go to class, get a good grade, get a job, and we're losing that kind of like conversational aspect of it. If the student had felt comfortable to ask questions, felt like, oh, I know my professor, I know that he'll be here or she'll be here, that kind of thing. I think that kind of starts that foundation again, but we're kind of, again, going into this tech world of like, we're all just behind screens and not really like willing to come forward. And I think like building that back with your students is also very important.
Yes, thank you for saying that. Hi, everybody, this is so helpful. I can feel y'all's passion in this, so thank you. Two totally different questions. The first thing I'm curious about is, how do you all discuss mindset and for them to prepare for their career? Because I'm always wondering, because they're always like, graduation and internship, they're always thinking ahead, which a lot of us are, but the connection, the conversation about what we're doing now and why this is so important, how this is going to benefit you in your career, I'm very curious about that. And the second one, I haven't figured this out, how to master this in class yet, but when I have international students and English is not their first language. Mm-hmm. And I am that professor. Like, it'll be a quick pull aside. Like, I hear you talk in class.
Yeah.
So let's just have a real conversation here. Mm-hmm. How are you all managing that? I know it's two very different questions, but I'm very curious about them.
I get that second one.
Okay. Can you repeat the first one? I'm so sorry. When you say mindset, do you mean like...
Like, are y'all talking about this is so important now why you synthesize and understand? Because when you become an attorney or an accountant or a business person,
yeah, I think it goes back to like citations and sources. I feel like the sources should be something you're interested in and want to put in your paper because you understand it and you want to talk about it, and it's a good point to help make this claim. And I think like a lot of these students are in degrees that they know they want to work in this field. Like some students are saying, well, I've taken a class like this in the past, that's why it's so good and that's why there's no errors here. And it's like, great, like we don't want you to be experts all the time though. We want you to kind of learn and like have mistakes, cause confusion, that kind of thing, so you can build your strength and confidence when you're going into these fields. And so I try to do that. At my point, I do go class to class before the semester starts. I try to go to orientations, that kind of thing. And I'm like, you're here for a reason. We're losing this reason that you're here. The passion is lost whenever you see other students using AI. It's lost whenever you feel like you're not connected to your courses or your professors. It's lost whenever no one's talking on campus when you're walking around. And I feel like sitting at a table on the quad being like, come talk to me, is the only thing I can do to kind of help them like voice these concerns, find again why you're here when you're walking through these hallways. Like, where are you going? Like, what are you going to do in this class today to like show that you're here and you're like watching and you're listening and all those kinds of things. And I feel like just reminding them they're here for a reason. It's not so stressful. It's not so hard. It's actually like we're all here together and we're doing this as a whole. It's important to remind them. I know like they don't hear us when we're talking to them sometimes, but if I say it, you say it, everyone else says it, I think that can help maybe form that kind of connection beyond just graduating, but
And in terms of academic support services, our tutors are first trained to make sure that students are learning the process. It's really important to us that they just don't spit out an answer, and that they're actually trying to make sure that the student is learning the steps so that in the future they can do it on their own. We train our tutors that we hope by the time that the students graduate that the tutors are obsolete and that they're no longer needed, right? That they are able to grow and learn and be able to support themselves. In a lot of that training, we also teach our tutors about growth mindsets, and we tell them to please share that with the students who come in as well, because a growth mindset is one of the biggest predictors of success. And that is, are you okay with making mistakes? Do you see that as a personal failure or a chance to grow? And when I hold academic skills workshops, when I work with tutors, and I try to just reiterate over and over again, this is your time to fail. You are surrounded by people who are smart and know their stuff, and they really want you to succeed. So if you fail, you are surrounded by people who are going to help you get back up and fix what it is that you need help with, and then by the time you get out of here, you're going to be really well set for life. And viewing school at the time that it's okay to make mistakes and not I need to have the perfect A every single time, helps reduce that reliance on AI and cheating, because they know, well, maybe I'll make a mistake on this assignment, but my professor will give me the feedback that's necessary in order for me to do better next time. And so trying to teach them that growth mindset, I find, has been very, very helpful. In terms of the second question, can you repeat your EFL one again?
Just international students, how are you all managing that dialogue if a professor sends them to you and they maybe didn't have that little conversation that I like to have with my students? How are you all talking about that?
When international students come to our different services, especially at the Writing Center, we generally don't offer grammar support, though we do help international students a bit more with grammar when they're running into different issues. Sorry, because we talked so long about the others, I can't remember what your conversation that you said you had with your students was.
Is there a tool or something that because I would actually like to be able to use you all as a resource, but I want to know when they come to you what the game plan is, pretty much. Mm-hmm. What's the game plan?
So the game plan, it depends on what they need. So actually some international students come directly to me. I've received some from academic coaches. For context, I lived in Japan for 9 years as an EFL professor. So I have a lot of experience with international students and English as a second language. So if you've really got a student who's struggling and they need help on those papers, or they're having trouble reading long text, you can send them straight to me, because I know exactly how to help them. I know how to do that and have that conversation with them on like how we work through things and schedule out and make sure that we're getting our work done. If they go to the Writing Center, it's often good to let them know that it's okay to tell the tutors that you are an ESL student, and so you need a little bit more help on the grammar and understanding what rhetoric is kind of necessary in different courses in different contexts, because culturally you just don't know, and so people need to be direct. We do train our Writing Center tutors on that, and the students who go to see them should feel comfortable reminding, and if they need extra help, again, they can always talk to me. Or Caroline Coppersmith is our new Writing Center coordinator, and she also has experience with EFL students. So we have a lot of people in our office who are completely prepared to help with international students. So you should just send them right our way.
Thank you both.
Also, to add from our office perspective, we do a report every year, and it's been 2 years, so not every, I can't say it's been many years, but for the past 2 years, I've seen a disproportionate amount of international students in our office, which I'm sure shocked nobody, that there's disproportionate effects for students who are not as, willing to kind of ask for support. They don't really know how to ask for support. I think what I see, again, like the thing where you say, like, I see how you talk and I see what you produce, and it's the same for our office. It's like, I think there's a lot of comprehension errors that I see that I'm like, I wish we could have had this conversation before you ended up here. And what they say back to me is like, well, I don't even know how I would have started that conversation. I don't even, like, a conversation. And so I think that maybe rephrasing the way, like, so when a student gets kind of feedback from their grades or feedback on their paper, and it's like, well, this is wrong, work on your citations, do this differently. And it's like, they might not know how to do any of that. And so, like, instead of saying that, perhaps being just like, what support do you actually need? Like, do you need comprehension support? That's totally fine. I'll send you somewhere for that. I don't want you to kind of be on the back end of getting, because it is a bigger impact for international students in our office, right? Like, a failure for the course is much more to someone who's here on a visa than it is for someone who will just retake the course in the summer and be okay. And so I try to sit there with the student and be like, reach out to ISSS, like, get these resources on your, like, to have your back whenever you might be dealing with these kinds of things, because likely if I see them in the beginning of the semester, like as a freshman, I'm going to see them again as a junior and a senior, because they're not really learning as much as they're like trying to hide it better, because they still don't have that comprehension. They go through our office, they have an outcome, but they still don't feel prepared to go to the next class and not end up here again. And it's sad to see because I can't really do much about it, but it's a big thing that's happening. And so again, going to those classes beforehand is what I try to do to get back at them from not ending up in our office. But again, I do see them. So that kind of stuff is also part of it.
Yeah. And just as a little final note, that I find that the best thing in my experience with EFL and international students is building rapport and talking very frankly about intercultural differences, because they may be running into things where in whatever culture, country that they come from, they're not supposed to ask you for help. I, for context, spent some time in Switzerland as a kid, had a French teacher who I asked her a question and she told me I was stupid. I was 9. So depending on their cultural background, they may think they're not supposed to ask you. And so making it really clear from the beginning of, this is my class and this is who I am, and you should always feel comfortable coming in to talk to me. We have all these resources, and just keep hitting them over the head with that throughout the whole semester and their time here, that they can learn that they can ask for help, that this is a safe place for them, and that we want them to succeed. Okay, thank you. All right, I think the person next, we can just pass in a line. No, the black with a, did you also have one? Okay. Sorry.
Hi, my name is Rani. I'm from Sociology Department. I guess my question is, I believe it was Alexis who mentioned that if we do find that students have been using AI to exclusively generate, content or outlines, we can come to the Office of AI, or it can be
Our nickname.
Anyway, so my question would be, I know we do not, the university does not really have a clear policy on where do we draw the line, or what is the threshold as a faculty when you decide that, okay, this is where we draw the line, and then we can go and come to your office. Because I personally don't want to penalize my students for things that they may not know themselves. I'm still learning, and I'm pretty sure they are learning too. So is there some kind of a threshold by which, I know there are some apps and some websites which check, you can just key in the cut paste the text of the essay or whatever assignment, and you can check, and then it can come up with the different highlighted portions that the student has used AI for 90% or 70%, whatever content generates. But having said that, even if I do know, because after a month or 6 to 8 weeks, I know my students' capacity to write, the language they use, and the way they express their thoughts and ideas. So I would be able to know whether that would be generated by AI, even though I do not have concrete evidence or proof. And in the absence of a tool or a reliable source, for example, Turnitin or plagiarism. So I'm kind of trying to understand if we do have a threshold by which we say, okay, this is where I can accept, and beyond that, that's when I come to the office, with a student or report a student. I don't want to report my student, but that's basically it.
Yeah, I got you. So I will go into the policy or lack thereof of it all in the next few slides, but for that question directly, I think generally how it works is you could have a teaching moment for pretty much any concern you might have. The line, I guess, and what we say in our office is if you don't feel comfortable grading this without the mindset that there is some sort of outside resource being used. So if you're I'm reading this, but I feel like AI might have wrote that, so I'm going to give them a point off for that because I think it might be AI. That's what is not okay from a professor to do. So that would mean you have to report it if you don't feel comfortable enough to grade it without this in mind, or giving them an alternate assignment, that kind of stuff. So if you feel okay, I don't want to do any of these things, I still have a concern, I kind of want this to be taken to our office, then we kind of take it out of your hands and we start doing our process. The only thing with that is I feel that professors come to us and give us the concerns, but then the outcome happens, and then it's well, I didn't want that to be the outcome. And it's right. So where do we start where we don't have to go through all this then? Because, again, failing course is the outcome most commonly. A lot of the times it could be a fail for the assignment, but that depends because someone who's coming in for an exam, their fail for the assignment is going to be much worse than a discussion post fail for their assignment. So it's it's a lot of things to juggle, and hence why there's no policy or there's no generalized policy, because how can we make one policy for all these different layers of things? So there is a line, though. I will go over kind of like different ways you can limit or not limit AI and what that line would look like. And then you would know, okay, if all these things have been checked off, now I'm going to report it, versus could I kind of make this a moment where I can teach them, they can kind of redo this thing or make me believe that they did not use this tool to do it. And I'll go over that later. But yes, we do have some sort of mini threshold for that, essentially.
Were there any other questions, or are we good to...
I'm going to go time-wise.
Okay. Yeah, time-wise. So there was a lot of amazing questions. We won't be having discussion right now. So we're moving on to the next piece, but I'll come and pick that up from you. Okay, so in this section now, what we'll be going over are different things that we can do in our syllabus, but also discussions that we can have in class in order to help reduce these integrity violations. Because the number one way to reduce it is clear communication, so that students know really where that line is, and most students don't want to cross it. So really laying it out in the sand is a great way to start. And it's always really important to remember that different instructors have different lines. And so you may feel, oh, it's really obvious that this shouldn't be done in AI in my course, but another professor might have told them to. And so you need to be clear, not just each course, but every assignment, where your line is, because they're hearing different things in different courses and they might get them mixed up. They might think you're okay with it because they're remembering what another professor said. So just try to keep that in mind when you're repeating it to students is, well, they just heard that different thing, last period, and I just need to make sure they know what's going on in my course.
Okay, the policy. So essentially there is no policy across the university surrounding AI. There are different ways in which professors that are concerned about AI and report it to our office, it's kind of the violations it falls under rather than saying, we think you use AI. So I'll go over a few of what those look like. One of them is dishonesty in examination. So next to this kind of excerpt from the code itself, I put what this is essentially saying, which is that students are not allowed to use unauthorized materials on an exam, including AI tools. So I guess I will kind of refer to many examples I have in my mind of what students are doing, given this is still in the code. And a lot of that is like take-home exams. They're using outside tools, things they don't know we can see or you can see on your end is like the clicks that they're doing for each assignment, and if they're leaving Canvas, going back onto Canvas, that kind of stuff. So all these things and tools and background information help us to lead to an AI concern. So no, it doesn't start as we think you're using AI, but what we do see is that you might have been using an outside resource. It shows you were doing something different here. Can you explain that? The student's like, oh, I was having technology troubles, or I was doing A, B, and C. And then sometimes it's like, yeah, I was going to ChatGPT and having it write my answers for me. So that's one of the things that AI or potential concerns about AI could fall under dishonesty in examinations. Dishonesty in papers, and one we see really often. These two violations in itself are the ones I've been seeing the most often in the past. Like for finals, most of the cases were both falling under A4 and A6 from our code. So one of them is that what I always say to students when I go to every class I go to is that the students' work should be 100% their work 100% of the time. I think that 100% of the time is where they get kind of kicked on their feet, because 100% of the time means for every class, assignments should be individual to each class, and what is happening is they're either copying from one class, putting it into another, they're taking a tool and copying their work from this class and using that tool to do it for a different class, all kinds of things like that. So saying original work 100% of the time, not whenever you're doing drafts, it doesn't count for them. That's still 100% of your time is including in drafts as well as everything else you do in this class. Just reminding them of that. But again, we're seeing a lot of that right now with them using tools for their papers, and what kind of it goes into A6 here, which is fabrication of data. So this refers to students who are using AI and they're putting citations into their work and we cannot find the citations. That's the most common thing I think I'm seeing, is that the professor cannot find the citation after going through the library database, after going through all kind of scholarly research, they still can't find the source. And so whenever I tell that to the student, they're always like, what? That's crazy. And I'm like, yeah, so if you can find that source before we see you again in your next meeting, that would be lovely. And most of the time they can't, because it doesn't exist. And so I think, again, they don't know what they don't know. They don't know that this tool they think they understand is actually not very full. It is not very reliant, and it's not very helpful in the long scheme of things. And so the student is giving fake sources to us. The professor is seeing it and saying, I think there's some sort of outside problem here. I don't feel comfortable enough knowing that they did. Half their citations are not real. I don't feel comfortable to kind of give them a new assignment. I don't think they're understanding that they can't use AI here. Submit to our office. It becomes a concern. So I think that like helping the students understand that these things might not say AI in them in the description, but they will be used if the professor has a concern about these things. It's helpful for them because for the first, like they're never seeing fabrication of data ever until they come to our office and they're like, what does that even mean? And I have to be like, yeah, it just means that they think they're using a tool that is not your own brain here. And so that kind of thing. Another thing I'm seeing is like page numbers as a big, I think a catch for students right now is that the page numbers could be very wrong and opposite, and that's a big tell for professors right now is to submit it to our office, and then the page numbers turn into this author is wrong, and then that turns into this sentence isn't even in the book at all, that kind of thing. So I think what is happening is students are not checking their work, they're not thinking that these tools could possibly be giving them wrong information, and then they're rolling with that, and by the time they get to the end of their paper, they don't even think to go back and check that because that was never a problem in their mind in the first place. So those are the three things we mainly see as far as what can be considered an AI violation. We do not use detection tools. So there used to be a tool that would show they think this paper is 75% AI generated. We would use that in our office as evidence, and then the student would be like, oh, well, there you go. And so now we feel like that was inaccurate because the detection tool was highlighting like titles, page numbers, all these kinds of things that were not actually taken from AI. So we got rid of the tool as far as evidence goes. So back to your question earlier about like a professor's kind of what they can do to like make a line there is that you can use a detection tool if you want to. If you feel like that's helpful for you to like present a conversation and be like, I'm seeing some inaccuracies here. Can you please explain that? And then we can move from there. Versus like, we're not going to come to them and say, we use this tool and we're using this as our evidence. We would just say like, due to these other things that it's told you about, that's why you're here. Not because this detection tool told you to be here kind of thing. If that makes sense as far as what we use for evidence sake. And then this is kind of the line you were talking about. So this is the most efficient way, I think, to explain to students how boundaries are set with AI. And this can be something you show in your courses if you'd like to. I can definitely send this to anyone who needs it or wants it. But it's the red light, yellow light, green light. I feel like giving the student something like this is a lot more helpful for them than giving them a bulleted point of list of things you can and can't do. I think saying, I have a red light policy here, which is I have no AI use in my classroom. I'll go through each one a little bit just so you kind of know like where we draw the line for each particular light, if you will. But the strict no use policy is saying that like if you're using AI, you should acknowledge it. You need to acknowledge it. And I think that will stop a lot of students from using it because they don't know how to acknowledge it, or are they willing to say they use this tool? Because if they do acknowledge it and you ask them how they used it, they might have to say, well, I just copied and pasted from it. I didn't actually use it for any organization. I didn't use it for, to get my research going. I used it just to write my paper, and they won't say that to you. So no use is saying you're not doing anything with AI at all. And if you do, then that could be a violation of the Academic Integrity Code, explaining what that looks like and what the consequences of that could be. A yellow light, limited conditional. So I would say anything past a red light is something that's going to involve some more work on the end of the professor, because yellow light, green light means that you have to kind of teach AI literacy. So you have to explain, like, I allow some sort of AI, but like then teaching them how to use that tool if they do rely on it. So a student who thinks they can use it in some sort of way is probably going to use it and not understand what it means to actually like appropriately cite these things. And they could end up in our office because they're taken a little bit too far, that kind of thing. So again, just emphasizing they need to be citing these things. They need to have explicit permission and guidance for each assignment. I think reminding them how you can use AI for this tool. So if you're doing a discussion post, you probably don't need to use AI for that. Please use your own brain for that. Emphasizing that before the process or before the assignment is given, that kind of stuff. If it's a big research paper and you want them to use it for generating ideas, tell them what that looks like, not that they can use it and then stopping there. Tell them like what you could put into this toolbar to say like what you need help with, that kind of thing, so they have an idea of what's wrong and what's right. For encouraging an open use of AI, this is kind of tough because I have seen a lot of cases where they are coming from classes in which AI is accepted and they're using it and they're confident in this use of AI. Like they're in our office saying, I would tell my professor that 3 times over that I did this way and I wouldn't think it's wrong. And the professor is like, well, I told them they couldn't do it that way. And they're not really like, that comprehension is not matching up there. So I think if you have an encouraging or open policy about AI, a green light, the student's taking that green light and like running for the hills. So I would say like, make sure you can emphasize where you draw the line and how each assignment can be benefited from AI use and not benefited, and how that will kind of come to fruition if they're using these tools or not. Any questions on this particular kind of red light, green light, yellow light situation?
Yeah, could you send that to us? Or
So actually, after this session, the plan is we're going to be sending out an email with a OneDrive folder that has the slides, links to the other resources in here, all sorts of other stuff. So everything's going to come to you in a nice email. If you didn't register for this particular one online, feel free to email either one of us and to get added to that email, and we'll send it out tomorrow so that we can hear from anybody.
Yeah, and the only other thing I think I would add is that what I'm hearing from students a lot is saying that I use this source, but I didn't actually know why I used it. And so I don't know where we need to go back to foundation-wise about how to teach them to understand what source they're putting in their paper. And it's not just for requirements for the paper. You need 10 resources, but you need 10 good resources, not just 10 any resources. So I think having them discuss their resources and citations with a partner in class or things like that to be I'm confident, I know why this is in my paper. If I'm asked about it, I could present why it's in there to somebody else. And then maybe that will build their confidence over time. But that is something I'm seeing a lot, is that I don't even remember this citation at all. I don't know this book where I got it from. I forget in the process where this happened, that kind of stuff. I think they kind of get lost in the AI sauce, if you will, about all these things, and it kind of gets lost on them over time.
Okay, so some more ways to kind of guide them away from AI use if that's not something you want them doing on these assignments. First is to share, again, those resources, for example, at the Academic Support Center at the Eagle Learning Center, is, for example, next to a writing assignment, say, here's the link to make a session with the Writing Center. Are you stuck? Or something that every time I mention it, people are shocked to hear, Quant Support does offer software support. So if you use RStudio, Excel, anything else in your courses and your students I suffered in some courses in my undergrad for sure, but and they're struggling with it, they can book an online session with Quant Support and they will walk them through what they're having issues with, and they don't have to be in a math class. It's not just for math students, it's for anybody using software. So I think that adding those and saying, hey, you don't have to suffer through this alone. We have those resources. They're right here. Here's the link. Go book a session and they're going to help you out. Really means that students will feel supported, and that will be the first step that they come to when they're struggling, and not just Googling the answer or ChatGPTing the answer. So as a quick aside of what we do, so for example, at the Writing Center, improving writing skills, PASS is one-to-one tutoring. Supplemental instruction for those, I know it's popular with some professors, others aren't as familiar. You can apply to have a student attend your courses with you and then hold after-hours study sessions with those students to work through extra materials. Quantitative support offers math support also in non-math courses, so econ students can go to the math center. They can get that help that they need, as well as software support. Academic coaching, if you're noticing there's a student who's really struggling in their note-taking skills and they're falling behind in things, you can send them to one of our amazing academic coaches. I've seen them do amazing work with students. And then there's accountability groups. So these are new study groups that we started as of last spring that have been slowly growing. And students go weekly to work on their own assignments and work. And we found that close to 80% of students said that they were able to stay completely on top of their assignments just by going regularly and having that study time kind of built into their schedule. So that's another thing that you can kind of show to your students of, hey, are you having trouble scheduling study time? Here's a group that you can go to, and you can just be there and study and get through that work with a bunch of other like-minded people. Now we're going to get into the actual discussion tool that was kind of hinted at earlier. So one of the things that students really need is a discussion. You can write down on a paper, here's my line, but the world is not black and white, it's full of nuance. And so the best way to hammer out those nuances is to talk with them about it. They may not know where that line is, they may not understand why they need to do this work. So discussing these expectations can help reduce those misunderstandings and temptations. So there is a really great resource that was created by Dr. Ryan Watkins at George Washington University. And it's a way for instructors and students to interact when discussing AI at the beginning of a course so that students can understand where their professor is coming from. So the surveys are anonymous, And there's this nice QR code if you want to pull it up. I made it into a Microsoft form. It will also be in the OneDrive, though, that I'll send out. So don't feel like you got to do it right now. So it's anonymous. You can make a copy for yourself and then a copy for your students. And then you go over the results together in class. So I'll show you what that looks like here. So this is an example question. So this is one that might be for an essay assignment. And of course, you can change any of these assignments. There's many different types of questions that are in the current template that you can keep and delete. You can add ones, you can move things around. The point of them is that you find where you feel that your line is. Do you care that they're getting some ideas from a ChatGPT when they're stuck and they're not sure what to write about? Do you care if they're making their title using ChatGPT? And then you can choose that. And then your students anonymously also get to choose. And you can compare those results in person. I do know that like some people might go, well, I feel like this number should be in front of this number, da-da-da. I think that it's good to leave that in there. I used this myself when I was teaching, and I found that nuance that students automatically went, well, wait a minute. I feel like this is a lower level thing than that, initiates discussion. And so sometimes leaving those little bits in there will really encourage them to actually speak up and go, wait a minute, but I chose this because of this reason. And then that's a great time where you can kind of have that discussion. So something that I want you all to do is to find like a little group around us. I know we were supposed to do this earlier so that you would already know your kind of group. And I want you to think about in your course, do you have a writing assignment? And if you don't, that's okay, just pretend that you do. And where would you draw the line on the previous slide? And I want you to think about your answer for a minute. I'll have a little timer up here. And then you're going to turn around and chat with other people. And I want you to say where your line is and why. Because you're going to have to explain that to your students. Right? So here is the slide. I'm going to set our timer. You've got 1 minute. Go. So think first. We're thinking. Think first. We gotta think. We have to have a reason. All right, we're thinking. Our thinking caps are on.
To see like afterwards if students have different answers for like if they were at our office.
Mm-hmm. All right, your thinking time's up. Now you can discuss. Just for the sake of time, I'm going to give you 4 minutes. I know you all won't have time. I'm sorry. Okay, let's walk around and chat.
My response is I'm interested in this semester, which is for each major assignment, we're going to have a last conversation about what are the goals of the assignment, what do I want to get out of this, what do you want to learn, and where does AI not interfere with that? Therefore, what would be acceptable? And it varies assignment to assignment. My baseline of the class is you should, at each major assignment, will then say, are there things that you want to use for that? Like, usually there's a fancy challenge. So, but I want to know, like if actually part of our work is brainstorming, I want you to learn how difficult work is actually coming out of the topic. I don't want you to offload that to, right? If brainstorming is not the focus of math assignment, then hey, maybe I don't mind if you have some. But I think that the way they think about writing, I think about it as a way to open up possibilities. They think about it as and so when you chat to the gets to the top, you're like, cool, brainstorming is right there, right? So it really depends. And that's a lot of what I want to do.
Okay, so that was the little ringer. Sorry, it was a little quiet. I know that not everybody has had a chance to discuss yet, but we just had such good discussion earlier that we didn't have as much time now. So just as we're kind of wrapping up these things, what so far, how are you feeling about this kind of tool? Does anybody have anything they'd like to share?
Sorry, what was the question?
It's how are you feeling about this? Are you finding good points? Are there weak points? Do you think that this might be something that would work for your class?
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Erica. I'm in psychology. I think this list in particular makes me think about what are my learning objectives? What do I really want the students to get out of this assignment? And I was talking to my new friend here, about how idea generation is what I might want my students to do. And so if they're outsourcing that, then they might as well not have done the assignment. So it makes me think more deeply about, so what do I hope they take away from this assignment?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, and this is, and we'll pass to the next, but this is where you can start having that discussion of students of this is not busy work. You are gaining this by doing it. So I don't want you doing idea generation because I want you to be able to think on your own and think of these things. And if you're always just asking AI, you're not going to build that skill. And so the point of this is to just bring up those discussions in a more organic way where you can kind of build that rapport with students and say, I want you to learn and I want you to grow from my course. And so that's why I have these lines where I do.
I also think it's funny because I feel like a lot of students come to college for independence, and then they're using these tools and they're becoming dependent on something completely different. And so I think teaching that, it's like you came here to be independent. Where did you lose that whenever you started using a ChatGPT tool to create ideas for you? It might hit harder for them in that point of view versus being like, I really want you to learn something from this, because they don't care sometimes. They really don't. So I think being like, how will you feel better tonight sleeping whenever you know you did your own work and you can talk about it and you feel great about this subject and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, after environment, the number one concern that students had across all of our surveys was dependence. And so making sure that they know you're learning this skill so that if you choose to use AI, it is a choice and not a necessity when they jack up the price because those venture capitalists need their money back.
You see electricity prices have been going up.
Yeah, so fun. Letting them know that this will help them is a good step in the right direction.
I just wanted to lay on something one of the co-presenters mentioned earlier, which is scaffolding. It's the idea that in order to do the actual big essay, you needed to practice the intermediate steps of outline writing, idea generation, research, of course. So just reading that list, impossible to say that you could allow a higher order level of thinking to be passed to ChatGPT without them building up the experience of the lower level tasks. So if you're like maybe it's possible to be green light to start the class, to do some outline help and such, but then you get to the red light assignment and there's no scaffold. It's been taken away because ChatGPT or some generative AI have done that. So I just wanted to harken back to a point made in an earlier session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jenny in the Department of Chemistry. I really like this question as well. It's just like from psychology. For me, the idea generation would be important, and so what I also looked at is which lines fall where. So at what point am I saying like, they kind of missed the point of the assignment, okay. At what point am I saying, let's have a one-to-one meeting with the student? At what point am I saying, okay, we've got to send them to the academic integrity office? Like where the various lines are with the infractions there.
I also think it's like not realistic to expect that you all would take the time you spend doing everything else to sit and be like, well, I'm going to go back to academic integrity, because you hope and assume that they're better than using ChatGPT by the time they get to your classes. And that's a great assumption, but you know what happens when you make assumptions. And so I think that where is the line drawn there? I think just being open maybe. I think having them talk to each other is so helpful, because I've seen so many students that I talk to in my office be like, well, I was talking to my friend and she was just as confused, and she was this and she was that. And I'm like, great, but did you guys express that in person? Did you express that to your professor? Did you express that to your peers? And it's like, no, why would I do that? We just use the tool to help us instead. And so it's like bringing back, again, discussion-based things. I know people are so nervous now, like COVID happened, everyone forgets how to talk to each other now. It's just like having them be comfortable, just like expressing concerns or opinions, even if it's not about AI. It could be about like literally anything. They don't talk to each other anymore. So I feel like being like, where's your confidence level as a student in this class right now? If you're not confident, that's totally fine. I wasn't confident when I was a student either. And so it's just like helping them feel comfortable being uncomfortable again, because everyone's trying to be so perfect and like compete and all those kinds of things. And I feel like starting from the base up, even though, again, tedious, that kind of stuff, I think it does help them to like act like it's their first time learning something new, because then they can pretend to be a little bit, not perfect, and that's kind of helpful for them, I think.
Okay, I think she was the last one. Then that'll be our last one, just because we're running short on time.
I changed the approach that I've taken to talking about it last fall after some really negative responses from students last spring. And the big thing I always come back to is like, what is the intellectual work of the course? If we're in a first year writing course, essentially many of these things on this list, other than maybe proofreading, because you could argue that Word could do this or spell check is doing some of this, and I'm not going to nickel and dime them over that. like that's the work of my course. But if it's a higher level course, then the assumption might be that I've learned how to do these skills in other courses, so that can be okay. I also have multimodal assignments where, say, I want my students to translate their research into an infographic or to a video or something. I'm okay with them using generative AI like a Canva tool, for instance, because the work of my course is in graphic design. But I've even heard the students talking about it, and they're like, well, if I was in a graphic design course, this would be a problem. They're having these conversations, and they're realizing these things are a problem. But it is on us to be super clear on every single assignment in every course, how it plays out, and realistically, how people will be using it in the real world.
Yeah, thank you. It's a very good point that, like, the students are discussing things together, and they also see that there is no consistency, and it's just, the truth of the matter is we can't give them that consistency because there are different needs in different courses. And we can't have an overarching rule. As much as it would just be so nice if we could just go, yes, no. But that just doesn't exist. And so having these discussions with students, being really clear, and having continuing discussions with students, letting students know that they can always come and ask you first, like, oh, I came across this tool, and then it said I could do this, but I'm not sure I can do that. And that's a step for you to go, oh, don't do that. Or, yeah, sure, go ahead. I'm okay with you doing that. And if students know that you're open to that, they're much more likely to bring that to you. And so that's another point where instead of ending up in Alexis's office, they're in your office and you can have that discussion. And so just keeping that open line of communication with students and building that rapport is just so very important.
I also think students are starting to form opinions at the fact that like certain schools are embracing AI and others are not. It's like making them real controversial about it. It's in their minds. And like, for instance, I saw so many responses in my surveys talking about Perplexity and COBOD embracing AI, which is well and great, but like for students who are not in COBOD, their friends who are being like, use Perplexity, it's really helpful for this, and that's just not a line that has been drawn for someone in SPA or something like that. And so I feel like knowing that this Perplexity thing and this embracing the AI, age of AI stuff is happening, it's like more important than ever to be like, this is a generalized almost thing now, but like how are we actually using this? If you use Perplexity now and you become a doctor, you're gonna be able to use it then? Probably not. And so it's kind of like, outlining these things and showing that it's like perhaps okay for a business student who's getting taught in their classes how to use this tool because they've embraced the time, money, and knowledge into it, versus someone who is a freshman in a writing class should not be using it because they don't plan to do it in this way. It's kind of helpful, I think, as well.
Okay, so we'll just round off with our little ending here. So we thank you for coming. We had a really great discussion today. This was a wonderful session, so thank you all for being such wonderful participants. I also learned a lot from all of you. So what we're going to be doing is tomorrow, just in case people have walked in and they want to send us an email, we'll be sending out a folder with all of these different links and resources, as well as links and resources to different academic support services, so that if your course could potentially line up with one of these, that you already have the posters and links, and you can just put them right into your course at the start of next week so that they're there when the students get there. But also, if you have any questions about our presentation, or, for example, we send Writing Center tutors to different courses, not just writing courses, we're willing to send them anywhere. If you have a paper assignment and you want a Writing Center tutor to come to your class to talk about why they should come to the Writing Center, we will do that. We will send them right on over. And so,
same for our office. I will come talk to anybody in your classes. I'm happy to come do a little academic integrity session, same way I did today with those kind of red light, green light, yellow light things. We're
super sociable, and we're stuck in a little office, so just come and pull us out. And we can come talk to your students. We can come talk to you. Just feel free to contact us for any help that you may need. So if you want to take, just for now, if you want to take a screenshot of our emails in case you want to contact us later, then feel free to do so. But thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you.
Yes.
We did it.
Good job.
Yeah.